Hi, welcome back to Close Up. Earlier this month, Ray Buckley dropped his bid to become the national chair of the Democratic Party, but says he will move forward in the position that he has held at the state level for just about a decade now. So after a year in which Democrats in New Hampshire won a hugely coveted U.S. Senate seat but lost control of the White House and the State House, what is up next? Ray Buckley is my next guest this morning. Good to see you, sir.
Great to be back.
So yeah, talk about the bid a little bit first, then we'll move forward to become the national chair. We were just talking a little bit off camera. You said this really run a lot like a presidential campaign.
Oh yeah, the candidates raised over $1 million. I did not. Had massive staffs. Some of the candidates went to 40 to 45 of the states. We had 12 debates, most of them televised. All of them were at least online, all across the country. And it was a phenomenal experience.
Yeah, I mean, you're not a newbie to this game, but did it surprise you just how comprehensive this race became?
Well, it's never been anything like this on either the Democratic or Republican side before. But my favorite part was being able to brag about what we do here in New Hampshire, and the fact that a lot of the candidates would pick up on my lines and repeat them. And after all, it's building the strong grassroots was what caused me to decide to run. So it was pretty good.
You talked a lot about this. Now you're gonna keep your position at the state level. I looked it up. I think on March 25th, marked 10 years
exactly
since you held it.
And that's my re-election.
So what's the plan moving forward? Priorities?
Well, I think certainly both Donald Trump and Chris Sununu offer great opportunities for us to make a contrast. That it is hard to take either one of them as very serious thinkers about really addressing the issues. The sort of the fly from the hip style by both of them, and certainly the scandals that are emanating from the White House right now, whether or not the Attorney General is going to have to resign just weeks after holding office, and then you compare that to the amazing leadership of our congressional delegation, Senators Hassan and Shaheen. That was my easiest and quickest applause line across the country. People have already know about the great work that Senator Hassan's doing, and joined together. It really makes New Hampshire proud.
What did you make of the president's speech last week? Because even some of his skeptics said, you know what, this was a different kind of Donald Trump. He did deliver a more inclusive message.
Well, I think that certainly he read the speech well, but the reality is that we are still in the infancy of the investigation on the Russian involvement in his campaign and this administration. And I think this is going to become extraordinarily serious in the coming weeks.
You have Senator Shaheen that said that this could be viewed, perhaps Russian involvement in the campaign, as an act of war. And then you have the skeptics on that side saying, you know what, look, this is more sour grapes. People still can't get past the idea that Hillary Clinton should have won but didn't.
Well, you know, as one of the persons that were briefed by the FBI last August about the significance of the Russian involvement in our political system, and obviously I can't go into the details of that, but I do not think that Senator Shaheen in any way engaged in hyperbole. This is a very, very serious situation.
An act of war.
It is a very serious situation.
Okay, so at the state level, obviously, there's a victory for Democrats despite holding the minority at the State House when it comes to right to work. Some other big issues, though, coming up, not the least of which includes residency, some voter laws toughening them up, something that Democrats have long been opposed to. I'm just going to play devil's advocate here. A 10-day residency requirement. I mean, why isn't that a good idea when we do hold the First in the Nation primary?
Well, I think that every time Republicans across the country have tried to make it more difficult for citizens to vote, it's actually up the turnout. And so I expect a great reaction by voters across the state. I don't think that they care for the fact that Republicans are more interested in making sure that Americans can vote than actually doing their job in office. And I think that when you look at this, the reality is that these individuals are counted in our census. They are New Hampshire citizens, and they should be able to participate in democracy here in New Hampshire. We're very proud of that. But you know, I'm still waiting for Chris Sununu to apologize for his attack, or even Donald Trump's attack on New Hampshire's electoral system. We are a very proud system, citizen democracy here in the state of New Hampshire. Bill Gardner's been our Secretary of State for 40 years now, and to imply somehow that New Hampshire voters don't count, I think that's really the lowest of the low.
Yeah, a lot of people do say that, you know what, the verbiage that was used in that was wrong, saying busloads of people came up here to vote illegally.
But that's something they've been saying for 20 years. 1997, I was in the New Hampshire House on the House Election Law Committee, and there was a state rep, a Republican state rep from Hudson, who made that same accusation. So it's the same lie that they've been saying over and over and over.
But you brought up Bill Gardner, Secretary of State. He is in favor of a residency requirement, be it 10 days, 30 days, 15 days, whatever, just to ensure that the law currently isn't being abused. Now, you cherish the primary as much as anybody here in New Hampshire. Why not just take that step? Because realistically, how many people were we talking about this impacting?
Oh, I have no idea, but it's really not even the specifics of the issue. It's the fact that they are so aggressive about trying to make sure that individuals don't vote. We actually have had millions of ballots cast over the years, and the instances of voter fraud are in the less than 0.0001%. And to somehow make it more difficult for hundreds, if not thousands of individuals to vote just because of one or two individuals, often Republicans, by the way, I just don't think that's the right thing to do. That's not the right message to send to the country. If we have the First in the Nation primary, there's no evidence of fraud, but we're going to make it harder for people to vote.
Let's talk about 2018 and then 2020. I know it's a little early, but it's
never too early
here in New Hampshire.
Never too early.
One critique when it comes to Democratic bench, and we talk about it, it'll start on the presidential level, is there is no bench. You know, who's going to step up next to the challenge?
I think that we are going to have a very large contingent. Hopefully it won't be as large as the 17 that we're running on the Republican side, but I anticipate.
Throw some names out there.
I anticipate that we're going to start seeing some folks coming up here relatively soon.
And anybody that you know that is already RSVP'd? What? It's worth asking. The invite.
How about those Red Sox, Josh?
Okay. Well, so David Price is going to be okay. 2018, though, obviously, at the state level, you would like to at least put up a firewall, get the Democratic majority back in one of the bodies of government. How do you go about doing it?
Well, I think that it's really going to be about turnout, and that's the one thing that we have been able to do on the here in New Hampshire. We have bested the Democratic turnout both in 2014 and 2016 and 2012, in fact. So I think that as you see the Democratic turnout rising across the country in reaction to the Republican majorities in Congress and President Trump, he was on television the other night, and that I think that you're going to see a significant Democratic turnout. And I think that in New Hampshire it's even going to be bigger.
We're almost out of time. I want to ask you, theoretically, in order to win, though, you're going to have to get some of those Trump supporters, many of whom were Bernie Sanders supporters, just anti-establishment folks that want to see some change. How do you go about doing that?
Well, I think I talked about that in the race for national chair. I think that the Democratic Party nationally did a poor job in really talking about a positive message about economics and people's future. And I think that we New Hampshire Democrats do that, and I think that we'll continue to do that. All
right. Well, welcome back to New Hampshire. Sorry your bid for the national chair didn't work out, but part of you must be a little relieved, right?
It is great to be home. I've never spent so much time in hotels in my life.
Okay. Good to see you, sir. Thanks very much.
Thank you.